And very often the people who claim this are people who know virtually nothing about nature because they have been taught by their religion rather than by science or through scientific observation. Again, as a biologist, both with a degree in zoology and someone who teaches human anatomy and physiology, I take a great deal of pleasure in doing public speaking around the issues of LGBT rights, and particularly about the occurrence of various different forms of sexuality that occur in nature. So that if anyone claims that something is unnatural, they're going to have to talk to a zoologist about that. So, as I said, I find this entertaining, but I think it's also a good kind of message to spread. And as happens throughout the world, another problem often has to do with healing and medicine, where there are lots of different issues and many different quacks will get involved in saying things that are not true. The United States did not address AIDS nearly as well as it should have in the early days, largely because the scientific view was not appreciated. Nutrition and health are multi-million-dollar industries in the United States, and they are often based on pseudoscience. There's a lot of good science out there, but there's a lot of pseudoscience out there as well. Abortion itself is a health issue that very often gets taken over by a religious viewpoint, very greatly to the detriment of many people. And of course, right now, at present, we have COVID-19, which the United States has not handled as well as it should. We've done lots of great scientific work on it. It has been fabulous in many ways, but the social response has been nowhere near as good as it should and has been nowhere near as scientifically oriented as it should be. I take great pride that a number of the vaccines were developed here in the United States, though through international collaboration. I consider it truly marvelous, the speed at which the vaccines were developed. So there's a great deal of good scientific work that has been done. But as you are probably aware, the acceptance of vaccines has not been nearly what it should be in the United States. One way in which I actually want to point up how the scientific process has worked during this pandemic, which I find it has been exciting in a very, sad way. I wish I were not experiencing this pandemic, but on the other hand, it has been exciting to watch the science develop, has to do with aerosol transmission, which early on, we did not think that this virus was largely transmitted through aerosols. But because of data collected in the field as the virus progressed, as the pandemic went on, and we looked at transmission in hospitals, and we looked at the presence of the virus in aerosols and the like, we actually learned about this as we were going on, and thereby learned about the importance of air filters and masks and so on in preventing transmission, not just for the safety of one's own person, but for the safety of others. So as I said, the whole topic of aerosol transmission has been one where we have seen the scientific temperament in action doing what it should do. And that has actually been very exciting to me. Now, regarding resistance to the scientific temperament, there are things to be done, though they are hard. The first one is persisting. And It's hard and it's sometimes dangerous, as you have related. And I take my hat off to all the people who are trying to do that. But it is a matter sometimes of having an iron jaw, of saying the same thing over and over and over again to different audiences. But I will also say that very often these issues, which should be scientific issues, become political issues. And one weakness that scientists have is that the way that we talk about issues, the way that we talk about our research, is not a way that works in the political arena. We are taught to present our data and present our conclusions and then stand back. And we believe somewhat innocently that the facts will speak for themselves. And we have seen repeatedly that that does not work in the scientific arena, in the political arena. Political arguments are different. Political arguments must be short, easy to understand, easy to repeat. Because we are scientists, we want them to be true, but they also preferably should be entertaining. It helps to tell stories. One example that I will give that I consider brave has to do with LGBT rights, where the out campaigns in the United States, where members of the LGBT community have actually presented themselves as being gays or lesbians or the like, so that the greater population realized that they had gay friends, that they had lesbian friends and the like. These people were very brave in outing themselves, but on the other hand, it led to a greater understanding that the population is full of gay people and lesbians, and society has not collapsed, and everyone is fine, and they are good neighbors, and they are good friends. And the out campaigns, I think, have actually done a great deal for the understanding of LGBT rights and the acceptance of LGBT rights, and the acceptance, which is a part of the scientific temperament, that basically the data are there. This is natural. It's okay. It does not lead to social collapse. But this was done through the bravery of a whole bunch of people. Other things that you can do to help move things along do include legislation. I'm very impressed with what you said about the Indian Constitution, of which I had been unaware. And there's also just plain education, educating people about the scientific method, educating people about what the scientific method has, what we have learned as a result of the scientific method. When I give talks to people about how science is done, I often say it is the two things. Many people think that science is basically a suitcase full of facts, whereas the most important part of science is the method of investigation, which then leads to these facts that we have slowly and painfully accumulated. I sometimes say that science moves at the speed of a glacier, but with the power of a bulldozer. When you treat something to the scientific method, it moves everything in front of it. And it really is very, very powerful. So what we can do can include trying to legislate. I have written a bill for the Massachusetts legislature, as was mentioned in the introduction, trying to make it required that science education be based on peer-reviewed science. And I would now add empirically based peer-reviewed science. In Massachusetts, we are doing very well. It is not a problem for Massachusetts public school education, I am pleased to say. But I consider having this legislation in place as a way of protecting students and teachers and their parents, as having something to point to if they need to, but also as model legislation for the rest of the country, because there are many other states in the United States that allow the teaching of alternatives to evolution and alternatives to climate change. And they are pseudoscience, and they should not be allowed to happen in public schools. And this is something that can be dealt with through legislation. And we have discovered in the United States that very often the states are where a good idea starts, and you will have the legislation passed in one state, and then it can spread out from there, either for good or for ill. In this case, I'm trying to do some good. We can all do public speaking, and we can all generally try to encourage people to accept the scientific method and the scientific temper. But there are many different ways to approach it. I've given you a few here, but I'm going to reiterate that when you are speaking in public, when you are dealing with a political issue, political arguments really are different. And they are not the way that scientists are taught to present their ideas and present their facts. So it is something where we have to reteach ourselves how to present to the general public in a way that will be comprehensible. And as I said, the things to do there are to come up with arguments that are short, easy to understand, easy to repeat, and preferably entertaining. And I think I will stop with that last idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abby Hafer, for your brilliant speech. You spoke about the situation in US and the response of public to science as well as to this COVID-19 pandemic. They are not accepting this science. That's what you told. You talked about LGBT rights, then poor response of people to vaccinations, and then you talked about aerosols, and also things to be done to spread this scientific temper. Your statement that science moves with the speed of glacier, but with power of boulders, this tells us all. We are proud about your work in Massachusetts about that legislation. We wish best for that. And we also have noted your guidelines on how to speak in public while talking of these scientific methods and scientific temper, etc. So very nice speech. Now I request Dr. Sudesh Ghoderao to see whether there is any question from our participants and read it over to Madam. Over to you, Dr. Sudesh.
Okay, thank you, Uttam. Madam, there is one question from the Facebook platform asked by Mr. Amar Nag. The question is, have you come across creationism and evolution denial by the ISKCON, that is the Hare Krishna cult? Could a Hindu version of evolution denial spread through India in the coming years? There are two questions actually.
Okay, now I'm afraid I didn't understand. I heard something. I'm sorry. I'm not doing well, I guess, with the technology. It was something about creationism. Could you just repeat it slowly, please? I apologize.
Okay. The question is, have you come across creationism and evolution denial by the ISKCON cult? By the
ISKCON cult? I don't know what.
ISKCON, it's a Hare Krishna, Hare Rama cult.
Okay.
The Hindu cult is there.
I personally have not.
Hello?
Usually when there is evolution denial in the United States, it is usually from fundamentalist Christians.
Okay. Okay.
But it is unfortunately, how can I put it? People find it fun. So if there is a cult in India that would find a way to do it, I wouldn't be surprised if they would try and if it would become popular.
Yeah.
And I am happy to give tips to anyone who wants to speak in public about this. I have been speaking in public about evolution and specifically about debunking what is called intelligent design, which is the usual way that creationists in the United States try to refute evolution these days, which basically goes that nature, and particularly the human body, is so absolutely fabulously designed, so fabulous that it has to have been designed by an intelligent creator. And I teach human anatomy and physiology. So as a result, I can tell you all about just how poorly designed the human body is. I take a great deal of pleasure in doing so, because although the human body is marvelous and amazing, it does not pass good design specifications. And there's a great deal of fun that can be had with that concept. I am happy to share with anybody who's interested. I'm happy to speak publicly about it. So if anybody wants me to speak, let me know. And I will see what I can do. I have some talks prepared with slides that are frankly a whole lot of fun.
Okay, that's good. There is another question from the YouTube audience asked by Mr. Arun Inamdar. The question is like, has anyone in United States tried using cartoons to inculcate scientific temper in the children?
What a wonderful question. And the answer is we have tried, but it's hard to get the funding for it. As a matter of fact, I have personally tried. The TV actor, John Delancey, who appeared in Star Trek: The Next Generation, was very interested in some of the work that I had done. And the two of us got together because he was very interested in exactly what the questioner put forward, which was the idea of using cartoons, basically short cartoons, as a way of entertaining and teaching children, maybe 10 years old was kind of our target audience. But we have not been able to make the project go forward. Animation is expensive and time consuming. Mr. Delancey does wonderful voice work. But we've tried and we have not yet managed to make it work. It is hard to attract funding. It's really hard to make this whole thing go forward. I think it's a great idea. But it's very hard to execute.
Okay, thank you. Now, Uttam, you can go ahead. Questions are over.
Any other questions?
Not yet.
Okay.
Thank you for answering.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abby and Dr. Sudesh Ghoderao. It seems that there are no more questions so far. Now, we all are eager to hear the speech of respected Mr. Amitabh Pal. But before that, I am requesting Mr. Sudhir Nimbalkar, Deputy Chief of Funds Management Department of our organization, to introduce our honorable speaker, Mr. Amitabh Pal. Over to you, Mr. Sudhir Nimbalkar.
Hello, Uttam. Sudhir is not there, so I am giving the introduction of Mr. Amitabh Pal.
Okay.
Dr. Amitabh Pal is the Communications Director of FFRF, that is the Freedom from Religion Foundation, United States of America. Prior to joining in February 2016, He was the managing editor of the Progressive magazine for more than a decade. He was also the editor of the Progressive Media Project, an affiliate to the Progressive that sends out op-eds through the Tribune wire service to hundreds of newspapers in the United States and other countries. Dr. Pal has appeared on CSPN and BBC and television and radio stations all over the United States and abroad too. His articles have been published in school and college textbooks in the United States and Australia. Dr. Pal teaches a course at Edgewood College in Madison, Wisconsin. He has a master's in journalism from the University of North Carolina and a master's in political science from North Carolina State University. So that is in brief about the Dr. Amitabh Pal. Over to you, Uttam Jogdan sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sudesh Ghoderao. All of us are aware that our organization was given an award by this US organization. As I understand, Amitabh Das, his recorded speech is submitted to us because he was likely to face some internet connectivity problems due to his pre-decided travel plans. So I think this recorded version will be played and he is available for question and answer, I think. So I request Mr. Avadut, our technical support and state level office bearer of our organization, to play the recorded speech of Dr. Amitabh. Over to you, Avadut.
Greetings from the United States of America. My name is Amitabh Pal, and I am the Communications Director of the Freedom from Religion Foundation in the state of Wisconsin, in the capital city of Madison. And it is such a privilege and an honor for me to be invited to speak at this webinar that the Maharashtra Andhshraddha Nirmulan Samiti is organizing for India's 75th independence anniversary, and to mark the notion and promote the notion of scientific temper, which is so befitting because, of course, in India now, the assassination anniversary of the late Shri Narendra Dabholkar is commemorated as National Scientific Temper Day. And we, first of all, want to applaud MANS and its leadership, especially Shri Avinash Patil's perseverance and courage in carrying on the work of science and scientific temper, and applauding it in the face, in the work it's doing in the face of some obstacles and trying circumstances. We in the United States and India have faced the same situation in recent years, especially more so with COVID. And as COVID has shown, the idea, the concept of scientific temper needs to be propagated and completely spread throughout these populations so as to be able, that they're able to take on such dire situations as the pandemic that both of our countries are facing. Our connections go deep between the Freedom from Religion Foundation and MANS. Bertrand Russell is someone we at our office really admire. Bertrand Russell is one of the people who is said to have first publicly used the notion of scientific temper or scientific temperament, which has been, of course, adopted as kind of the slogan by MANS. And Bertrand Russell's admirer and intellectual protege was none other than Jawaharlal Nehru, somebody we also admired at FFRF and honor. He's actually on our calendar this year, for example, and every November 14th, we have his quotation up on our electronic marquee. Nehru was the person who inculcated and introduced the notion of scientific temper in India. In his foundational work, The Discovery of India, which is a must-read, he said the applications of science are inevitable and unavoidable, but something more than its application is necessary. It is the scientific approach, the adventurous yet critical temper of science, the search for truth and new knowledge, the refusal to accept anything without testing and trial, the capacity to change previous conclusions in the face of new evidence, the reliance on observed fact and not preconceived theory. This should be a way of life, a process of thinking, a method of acting and associating with our fellow men. It is the temper of a free man. We live in the scientific age, so we are told, but there's little evidence of this temper in the people anywhere or even in their leaders. He was so right. And he also said that the scientific method of objective inquiry is not applicable in all fields, but even when we go to the regions beyond the reach of the scientific method and visit the mountain tops where philosophy dwells and high emotions fill us, or gaze at the immensity beyond, that approach and temper are still necessary. And he said in a very, very rationalist outlook and approach that as knowledge advances, the domain of religion in the narrow sense of the word shrinks. The more we understand life and nature, the less we look for supernatural causes, something that has been embraced by both FFRF and MANS. And it is therefore with the temper and approach of science allied to philosophy and with reverence for all that lies beyond that we must face life, that thus we may develop an integral vision of life which embraces in its wide scope the past and the present with all their heights and depths and look with serenity toward the future. Nehru thus introduced the notion of scientific temper in India. Later on, it was formally inculcated into the constitution, and through so many scientific agencies that he set up, he tried to popularize this notion among the public. And he wasn't at all, anti-Indian. Unlike what his detractors say, he was very Indian and yet very much wedded to the scientific approach at the same time. And MANS is carrying on so much of the same work. Alas, in today's India, as in the United States, the need for this work is greater than ever. As has been seen in India during the pandemic, under the current government's leadership, all manner of quack science and pseudoscience have been encouraged. Baba Ramdev has released a supposed COVID cure or remedy, Coronil, under official patronage. In fact, 2 ministers actually attended the inaugural of the release of the medicine. This anti-scientific approach goes all the way to the top, from members of parliament who claim that drinking cow urine keeps them immune from COVID, all the way up to the Prime Minister, who has said famously or infamously that the Mahabharata shows that in vitro fertilization existed, and that Lord Ganesh shows that plastic surgery existed in ancient India. Not all of this necessarily in India comes from the ruling party. There are enough culprits, but this quackery has received official patronage and cover in a way that it hasn't in the past, all the way from cow remedies to alternative medicine, which is very, very questionable, to extolling yoga as a cure. This hasn't happened, a fraction of this in the past. Similarly, in this country, President Trump and the Republican Party have been guilty of propagating extremely dubious remedies such as hydroxychloroquine, for example, very famously, and others, and claiming that the pandemic is either greatly exaggerated or made up, refusing to take the vaccine, often on religious grounds. And there is a correlation between being religious. A new study has shown, for example, that evangelicals, fundamentalist Christians, are the least likely to receive the vaccine, and atheists are the most likely to have received the vaccine in the United States. There's a Pew Research Center study that just came out that we have quoted in a press release today itself. In both these countries, the problem is that, as a friend of mine, Dr. Nasia Safdar, the head of in the infectious diseases department at the University of Wisconsin, says, people are much more willing to trust anonymous online sources rather than experts and doctors and go their own way, even supposedly educated people. In India, the joke goes that WhatsApp University is prevalent. People look up stuff and are convinced even when there is no scientific evidence or basis. The problem in both countries is there's scientific illiteracy, mathematical innumeracy, and media illiteracy. People are, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a mathematician, but the third aspect, which is media illiteracy, I am equipped to combat, and I wish I could do some media literacy classes for India, in India, to show people what sources to trust, what not to trust, and what to have faith in, so to speak, and what not to have faith in. That's why the work that MANS is doing is very, very important. It is so vital in this day and age to spread the scientific temper or the scientific temperament. We are very happy and willing to collaborate with MANS in such efforts and to make sure that these initiatives are spread throughout the population. MANS, of course, works in the state of Maharashtra, but the state of Maharashtra is larger than, as I've pointed out, when Avinash Patil came to our convention to receive the Avijit Roy Courage Award on behalf of MANS, that Maharashtra is larger than most countries in the world, or a lot of countries in the world. It is a vital region of India, with Mumbai, of course, as the capital, and the fact that among tens of millions that MANS is doing its good work is very, very key and very, very vital. Similarly, we here in the United States are trying to change minds, one at a time perhaps, but it's through such key work on changing an individual's thinking, person by person, that social change comes about, and that's why it's so important. And it's drop by drop that a bucket or a lake or an ocean is formed, and that's the reason that we feel that the work we are doing is absolutely key and vital, especially when so many politicians and political leaders, even now in the United States, Republican governors, for example, and in India, of course, the current government in New Delhi and so many state governments are so willing and happy to spread misinformation, to not take a scientific approach. It is actually a bit disheartening that the current Indian government is, in some sense, a descendant of Prime Minister Nehru's first government in the 1950s and 60s, and yet takes such a diametrically opposed view of science. And that is even more so the reason that MANS's work is important. And we here at FFRF are very, very eager to work with MANS in such projects in the future, and we wish MANS all the best. And on the occasion of National Scientific Temper Day, and India's 75th anniversary, we are so glad that this webinar is being organized and that the Freedom from Religion Foundation is taking a small part in participating in it. Thank you so much, and our greetings and best wishes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amitabh Pal, for a brilliant speech. You spoke about the COVID situation in US and India and how the situation was handled by respective governments and the people of both the countries. You praised the scientific approach of our ex-Prime Minister Nehruji. Then you also pointed about unscientific handling of COVID situation in India and also in US. You have talked about scientific, mathematical, and media illiteracy of people of both the countries, and that is a very important factor. And it shows that economic and scientific country like US and comparatively less developed country like India, the situation means people are same. And your message to the rationalist, drop by drop, ocean is formed, is very valuable message for people working in this field. So thank you very much for this speech. So, all of us have enjoyed it. And I again request Dr. Sudesh Ghoderao to see whether there are any questions on this speech. And let's go ahead for question answer session.
There are no questions.
Okay, thank
Go
you.
ahead. You can go ahead.
So now it is time of our chairperson's speech, presidential speech in this today's webinar. Our president is Mr. Avinash Patil. He is executive president of the organization as well as vice president of FIRA, that is Federation of Indian Rationalist Associations. But before that, I request Dr. Pramod Ganganmale, he is co-editor of our House magazine, to give an introduction of Mr. Avinash Patil to all of us. Over to you, Dr. Pramod Ganganmale.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Avinash Ramesh Patil belongs to Amritsar region of Maharashtra. He has completed diploma in civil engineering, but from childhood, he has been associated with the organizations and works that contribute to make the society rational and humanitarian one. He worked with Rashtra Seva Dal, Chhatra Bharati Students Organization during his school days. In an educational trust. He is associated with different organizations like Maharashtra Andhshraddha Nirmulan Samiti, Sani Guruji Karmabhumi Smarak Pratishthan, Amritsar, Samajik Kritanyata Nidhi, Manav Adhikrut Gat, Vice President of FIRA, that is Federation of Indian Rationalist Association. These all things make him contribute a lot in the agitations and movements that commenced for establishment of North Maharashtra University at Jalgaon. After establishment of the university, he participated in different socio-educational activities in the university in association with professors, students, teachers, and other stakeholders of the university. The organization of 12th State Level Conference of 1,000 students in 1995 proves his contribution and deep consciousness about education. He worked as Senate member of the university appointed by Honorable Governor of Maharashtra. Rashtra Seva Dal is an organization which inculcates the values and social responsibilities among the people. India, as dreamed by Mahatma Gandhi, is an objective of Rashtra Seva Dal. Avinash Patil has been associated with Rashtra Seva Dal with the same dream of Sane Guruji and Mahatma Gandhi. In 2000, he organized Yuva Sankalp Adhivesan and published Youth Manifesto. On the occasion of Diamond Jubilee of Indian independence, he organized Humanity Awareness Walk from Amarnath to Faizpur under the logo of We Are Made for Country Youth Resolution Campaign. He took hard efforts to spread peace and love among the people at the time of riots at the time of Babri Masjid demolition. He organized peace walk and unity conferences at that time. He initiated Hindu-Muslim Unity Conference and social harmony and the works of different committees that contributed a lot to establish peace in the society. He made educational manifesto on scientific approach and eradication of superstitions. He contributed a lot in the issues of farmer suicide, rural development, agriculture, education, violence against women, and policies of the things. Social Gratitude Fund, formed and participated by well-known actor Dr. Shriram Lagu and Nilu Phole, Sadashiv Amrapurkar, labor leader Dr. Baba Adhav, Dr. Narendra Dabholkar, Gajanan Khatu, and others. He is associated with this Social Gratitude Fund. He is also associated with Maharashtra Andhshraddha Nirmulan Samiti before from the formal establishment of the Samiti. He was executive president of Amarnath branch for 2 years from 1988. He also worked as Jalgaon district general secretary and state committee member and actively continuously for 6 years since 1990, and thereafter carried out responsibilities of state executive member for 12 years. He worked as full-time worker of Maharashtra Andhshraddha Nirmulan Samiti since 1996, and he is shouldering the state executive president responsibilities since 2009. He is associated with all programs of MANS since its inception, like animal sacrifice prevention, intercaste and interreligion marriages, rationality, scientific temperament, and mostly he is known for the Dakin tradition, that is witchcraft tradition in the Marathwada region. Under his leadership, MANS organized so many successful programs to enlighten people on the issues of superstition, scientific temperament, and many other things. 2 laws passed by Maharashtra Assembly or the state of Maharashtra under his leadership and under the works and contributions of all the volunteers of Maharashtra Andhshraddha Nirmulan Samiti. One law is anti-superstition law that was demand of Maharashtra Andhshraddha Nirmulan Samiti and Dr. Narendra Dabholkar since 25 years. And another law is anti-social boycott law, which is passed by Maharashtra Assembly. And these 2 laws are imitated by so many states in India and a few countries in the world. Maharashtra Andhshraddha Nirmulan Samiti received Avijit Roy Courage Award in 2019, and Avinash Patil is also awarded with a few awards for these contributive works in Maharashtra Andhshraddha Nirmulan Samiti and many other works that he is associated with. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Pramod, for this comprehensive introduction of our Executive President, Mr. Avinash Patil. Now I request Mr. Avinash Patil to deliver his chairperson's speech. Over to you, Mr. Avinash Patil, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Uttam Jogdanji. I'm very happy to hear to Mr. Vinod Bhardwaj representing Center for Inquiry, then Dr. Abigail Hafer, representing for American Humanist, Dr. Amitabh Pal, representing Freedom from Religion Foundation, and in the presence of our colleague, Dr. Sudesh Ghoderao, Sushila Munde, Dr. Savita Shete, Uttam Jogdan, Dr. Pramod, and others. Uh, Today, on the occasion of this international webinar on the topic of scientific temperament for independence and independence for scientific temperament, I think our all distinguished guests are very well narrated the theme of these topics uh, with the reference of our present situations in their country, in United States, and all over world also. On the background of COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic situation, there is a very much so many type of practices was promoting pseudoscience and anti-scientific temperament by state dignitaries and uh, some beneficiaries, groups, and individuals in their different countries. The political leadership's willingness to take the guidance of scientists and researchers in the field of this pandemic situation is in which countries the happens the and the guidance of scientists and researchers, the loss of humanity and human beings are less. But in our country, in India also, the political leadership's will is not for promoting scientific temperament nowadays. So for that, an organization man's is trying to take the stand to promote scientific temperament on our different type of group programs and approaches with the community of society. Uh, as per our this discussion, Mr. Vinod Bhardwaj very well narrated the as corona pandemic virus delta variants and about Kumbh Mela, and after that Karma Siddhanta, and also the importance of Indian constitutions and the scientific temperament mentioned in as a citizen's rights and citizens' responsibility in our Indian constitution. And the Dr. Abigail ma'am also very well stated that the about that the public science is required to promote the science for humanity, science for common man, science for society, and man's is trying to work on this theme. Our in India, All India People Science Network and our organization MANS and pro-scientific organizations and individuals have resolved to observe 20th August, a martyr day of Dr. Narendra Dabholkar, as a National Scientific Temper Day. 21st September is already observed as Miracle Truth Seeker Day since 1995, because Ganesha idols drinking milk incidents in 21st September 1995. During these months, like-minded organizations and individuals contribute to develop scientific temperament through different activities in Pan-India. This year, MANS has decided to organize national and international conference on scientific temperament for comprehensive human development. Through print, audio, visual, and digital platforms for effective discussion on different stages, utilization, and success of scientific temperament. Freedom has played fundamental role in incremental human development. This underlines the importance of to understand, inculcate, and disseminate at the concept, meaning, and parameters of freedom with social reform to human values and its interconnection with human development. Man's on the occasion of Diamond Jubilee of India's freedom has decided to centralize the theme of proclamation of freedom for scientific temperament from 15th August 21 to 15th August 2022. Freedom of questioning and criticism is very vital for eradication of superstitions. Secured and auspicious space is required for it. Human history has proved that the human groups that guaranteed and provided the secured and patronage space of freedom of questioning and criticism have developed themselves with decisive pleasure, happiness, peace, and fertility. This has again proved the importance of concept of freedom to develop the human world along with other creators on the earth. To move this forward, we have to inculcate in our deep consensus concept of freedom and its related aspect like democracy, republic, socialism, secularism, physical development through preservation of and promotion of environmental resources. These universal values have to be understood with the connection of freedom. Mans will celebrate this proclamation of freedom for scientific temperament throughout the year of 15th August 21 to 22. We have resolved to organize 75 online lectures on the core concept throughout our Maharashtra states in the first phase from this 21st August 2020 to 21st September. This will be associated with constructive and prominent efforts to bring the freedom for scientific temperament as one of the policies of life on the center of state, nation, and world also. We have to strive for continuous dialogues and acceptance of scientific temperament on the local, that means to local to global level. This not only requires the decision of scientific temperament associated with the exploitation in the name of God, religion, and traditional traditions, but constantly and deliberately we have to focus on acceptance, dialogue, and discussion of scientific temperament on all fields of human behavior for comprehensive human development. To achieve this, we initiate to build a connective and inclusive dialogue on state, nations, and international level of all associated individuals and organizations. This will collectively help to understand each other with work experiences and conclusive potentials on different socio-cultural and political levels to form a future connectivity. During this year, we will concentrate to eradicate the hurdles of human development with the help of scientific thoughts and life process. This will definitely help to understand the local complications with universal aspects and the interest to step forward for the eradication of the hurdles of human development. Prime focus is on to initiate a dialogue to get knowledge, temperament, analysis, and remedies. The people of Maharashtra, India, and world face the contraction and attacks on freedom of life. The repetition of history of exploitation and repression of freedom will repeat in future. We experience the constant emergence of symbols, idols, and systems, this exploitation and repression. Questioning is the first step towards eradication of exploitation and subjugation along with reformation in it. The only active and positive way is to propagate and accept the scientific temperament and consensus or rationality from individual to society through removing the repression of fear and death. The enemies of human security and life with honor and freedom exist from violence and bigotry, Talibani to so-called Sanatani. They subjugate the freedom and support their own value systems that depress the scientific temperament and its requisites like questioning, criticism, and right to object and protest, with subsequently leads towards the depression of right to life. So we have to build the consensus and rational thoughts systems that make the possibilities of delivering contemporary, open and free coordinating thoughts to their natural and fruitful growth and developments. Let's support the proclaim this freedom. Let accept the scientific temperament, proclaim the rationality. Long live scientific temperament, long live rationality, long live freedom. We will fight and we will win for it. Thanks. Jai Jagat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Avinash Patil, for your this presidential speech. You briefly summarized the speeches of all the three speakers. You also inform all of us about future plans of man's and how the plans will be executed. You also talked about propagation of scientific temper and the hurdles faced by us while doing that. Thank you very much for this, your nice speech. And before we move towards the concluding part of this webinar, I once again request Dr. Sudesh Ghoderao whether there is any question from our participants, any other question, else we will move towards concluding part of this.
Since all the three speakers are from the United States of the America, so it's a common question to all of you. I feel that each one can comment and each one can answer. The question reads like, how dangerous is it for you to continue your mission in the United States? The question is asked by Arun Inamdar. Just repeat the question once again. How dangerous is it for you to continue your mission in the United States? I think Vinod sir, Hafer ma'am, and Amitabh Pal, all three can answer their way.
Well, we at FFRF are really fortunate that we are based in Madison, Wisconsin. And so at least at the local level, we don't face very much hostility because it's a very progressive city. But as Annie Laurie Gaylor and Dan Barker, who have set up the organization, and we have been there for many, many years, can tell you, there's been a lot of hate and anger directed at us over the years. And it's hard to know what to take seriously and what not. But there's been a lot of threats over time, which is why we basically have to take certain precautions at our office. Thankfully, beyond that, there hasn't been in actual cases of us being, like physically, in danger, in jeopardy. But yes, we have faced a lot of anger and a lot of invective and a lot of threats over the years. And that's something that we always have to face, confront, and somehow, work through that.
Yes, I likewise am fortunate in where I live. I live in Eastern Massachusetts near Boston, and I feel fairly safe here, both in terms of the mission that we're describing, but also in terms of scientific acceptance in general. It's a very well vaccinated portion of the country, and likewise. Generally accepting of science, generally accepting of my mission. So in terms of my everyday life, I feel fairly safe. It is harder in other parts of the country. There have been times when I have spoken in other parts of the country where I personally have felt fine. But where they have said, they've asked me basically for talking points because they say, you don't know what it's like living here where there's a church on every corner. And we really have a hard time even talking about evolution, without there being pushback, and that's pushback at best. Which is why they like having me coming there, basically giving them talking points. But people can feel very intimidated in other parts of the country. And of course, in other parts of the country with regards COVID and the like, there are some very dangerous areas indeed, both in terms of passing around of the virus, but even in terms of people being bullied if they wear masks. And I speak now not from personal experience, but from the experience of close friends of mine living elsewhere in the United States.
Yeah, Vinod sir, you want to say something? Vinod sir, you have to unmute yourself. Please unmute.
I think it's not the physical worry, but, like our Richard Dawkins, he gets criticized a lot, So he goes through verbal abuse. I mean, he keeps getting all kinds of interesting emails, and he made a whole collection of those, and we enjoy those kind of things. So there's no physical danger, but people abuse him like crazy, So that's the only thing.
Okay, thank you. There are no more questions. So, Uttam Jogdan sir, go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you for this. This question was very important. Particularly, we have lost our leader,
Yes.
and we were just eager to know what is happening in US. So, thank you for your answer, sir. Now we are moving towards the concluding part of this webinar. And I will go for presenting the vote of thanks. I'm very thankful to all the present here, all the members, national, international. But before that, I am very thankful to our respected guest speakers, Vinod Bhardwaj, sir, Madam Dr. Abby Hafer, Dr. Amitabh Pal. and they have enlightened us. They have given very good speeches, many new things we learned from their speeches. So thank you, all of you, for being with us, and particularly looking at the timing of America. Vinod sir was saying that it was 3:30 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, it's 5 now, 5:12.
Yeah. And it is really, we are grateful to all of you. You are still awake when it was a very deep sleeping time. So thank you, all of you. And this shows the commitment towards rationalism of all of you. And that is really encouraging for all of us. And we the rationalists from India, have to learn a lot from that. I am thankful to our Executive President Avinash Patil for giving his chairperson's speech. I am also thankful to our technical lead, Avdut, and present here, all the present here. And I am also thankful to all the members of Maharashtra Andhshraddha Nirmulan Samiti, Sushila Munde, then Pramod Ganganmale, Savita Shete, our national coordinator, and all other members. I'm really thank you for making this webinar successful. Now, before conclusion of this webinar, here will be a song, "We Shall Overcome." This movement song will be played, and thereafter this webinar will be ended. I request Avdut Kamble to play that song. And again, thank you all. And I apologize if I have committed any mistake during my anchoring or during my expressing this vote of thanks. And over to you, Avdut Kamble, for playing the song.
We shall